Hi, and welcome to the IDEMS podcast. I'm David Stern, a founding director of IDEMS, and it's my pleasure to be here today with Kate Fleming, a fellow director. Hi, Kate.
Hey, David.
I've just got back from an exciting set of meetings in Rome, and one of the things which I've been exposed to is this farm hack box, really led by this guy, Dawn Cox. And I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to discussing it. I've been aware of boxes for a long time, but this is different. So yeah, keen to dig into this.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. And I think that for listeners, it would be useful to get a bit of background. So to talk about Dorn and even the fact that we connected through agroecology work. So what's the background there? Who is Dorn? How did you guys originally meet? And let's take it from there.
So we met Dawn when we were going through this float process, which was a funding process for agroecological interventions, initiatives related to technology in different ways, and got introduced to Dawn because he'd been one of the visionaries, if you want, in the US about open tech for agroecology. He'd been part of the founding group, I think, of GOAT, the Gathering for Open Agricultural Technologies, or something like that. I'm sorry if I got that acronym wrong.
I forget what it is too, but something like that. Yes.
But also, he's one of the founders, I believe, of Open Team, a group who are trying to bring together the North American technologies on this. They've been doing tech assessments to try and say, are these aligned with decentralized principles of open technologies? And he, in many ways, within that community, he was the person who I met and was a clear vision bearer for what technologies could look like as an alternative to what we're experiencing at the moment from big tech, and how actually communities, open communities, could build these.
It is also worth noting that Dorn is a farmer. So I think he works on his family farm. He works for this agricultural center in Maine. He lives in northern New England. But I think that intersectional, he's sort of tinkerer, also a deep software developer. Like he obviously has that experience. And then he is a farmer. So he is experiencing these things firsthand, I think, in a way that gives him this uniquely intersectional insight and experience and sense of what's needed.
And I'm sure he won't mind me sharing this bit of his story, but as I understand it, he was leading this really big project around these open technologies, which was really challenging. And then suddenly that funding got cut just over a year ago. And while this was devastating for the community, what's really interesting talking to him is that for him, in some ways, it was quite liberating, because he went from having all this responsibility for this huge project and this huge program to actually being able to do the things that mattered, that he really wants to focus on. And this is where this farm hack box came from, that taking of that decade or more of his experience working in these open communities for agroecological tech in the US, and actually saying, well, maybe I could just build what we need. And so he built the thing which he thought was needed in general, but specifically for his community cooperative farm space. That combination is deeply powerful because it's so rooted in the practical things that are useful. He's got it so that it's a point of sale system. So it replaces your need to go and buy commercial systems to take credit card payments and all this. It does all that for you. It allows you to have, if you want, and create your own internal currency, which is just stored on these boxes in ways which is data transfer, but that you can manage, and that therefore is frictionless transactions within your community. And this is just a side part of what he's built. But he realized that, well, these aren't a big deal anymore. We can just build them. From the work he'd done building this big community, he just got his head down and built stuff. And it's really exciting what he's built.
So could we talk more about these boxes? I think you've observed, and I have too, the concept of boxes is not new. That has been around. But you have the sense that this is really so different and for key reasons where this is something that's breakthrough that we see has lots of applications in other places. Could you talk through what that difference is more?
Maybe I'll start talking about the broader history of boxes. My excitement about these about a decade ago, because of working in low resource African contexts and thinking about using educational boxes to deliver resources, education in low resource environments. And we've been involved in that space. Or I personally have been on the periphery of that space for almost a decade now. And it's something where I never expected to be excited by a box again. It's something which has been tried and, in my opinion, has failed more often than it succeeded for reasons which I'll come into, but are actually predictable. That the idea of a box, many people take it as being something which is bounded and closed. And broadly, what I believe Dawn has done is he said, "Ooh, bounded is good, closed is bad. We need bounded and open." And the way he's done that has blown my mind. I didn't realize, I didn't think about this even as a possibility before, but it's incredible. It really is. And it's a layer of openness that I'd almost given up on, but it's brilliant. I probably need to get down to details to explain what I'm talking about rather than just saying it's good.
And I would also, even within that, a bit of defining of terms. What does bounded mean and what does open mean? Because I think
Yeah.
clarifying that would also help people understand what's so different.
So we've been thinking about the fact that bounding systems and digital ecosystems actually can have positive implications. But in the work and the way that we're doing this, which is really from a software perspective, there's no real incentive to bound. What Dawn has conceived is that actually the latest Raspberry Pi servers have terabyte hard drives. And that's a big bound to have. So it's bounded, but it's not limiting. That the bound is sort of almost big enough to actually leave room for imagination. You can put all the things you could possibly want on it and still have lots of space in the context that he's working. Now, I should be clear that a terabyte gets a lot smaller if you start having media, videos, audios, images. Then you can use space much more quickly, which is part of the problem that the education boxes got into, that they very quickly became about media, when media isn't the heart of it. What's really exciting is that the boundedness is sort of saying, well, so there are some things which are on the box, and then you put everything on the box, which sort of creates a coherent home. So the box is now more like a library, and you're curating these things. You're doing your tech assessments to see what can go on and what shouldn't go on. And his tech assessments that a part of the group that he's part of have been doing are achieving this. They're saying that it only goes on if it is open source, and therefore you can have the code going on as well as the application. And this is what I mean by open. So when you get a box, these boxes don't really exist at scale yet. He's literally just created them over the last 3 months. But you always have both the installer and the Git repositories, which mean you can edit and you can actually go through and tweak the installers in ways which are incredibly powerful. So open, we mean in this context, open source. And so the software, one of the criteria to make it on the box is that it is open source. Other criteria relate to the self-hosting and how things are hosted.
Yes, I was going to add, he has a list of other criteria. Like there are things that are open, but then you quickly get to when you hit some threshold of use, you have to go to a paid tier, some things like that, where that downgrades something. Not always, but if there's really a service that's being delivered there, that's exceptional, I guess that might give something a different consideration. But yeah, there's real thought in their way that they're categorizing things.
Absolutely. They're doing this in a way where it is deeply rooted in what I would call old school internet theory. And this is the other thing which is so mind blowing about this. Everybody's moving to the cloud. And then you have people talking about the cloud, but the cloud, it doesn't really exist. It's just these data centers. So what we're doing is we're offshoring all of our data and all of our sovereignty really to these big data centers. And therefore we're beholden to the data centers. These boxes are the opposite. The way they're conceived is that actually the terabyte, you probably don't need all that. So maybe a third or half of that might be used for what he called community services, which is mirroring other people's boxes. So now we're more like really old school internet, where the backbone of the internet is people's computers that are online and acting as servers, which then interact with other people's servers. So this is sort of this mesh network. Now, what's really even more powerful there is, let's take the school concept of this, where boxes are really popular, and let's apply that. Now imagine you have a box in every classroom. Well, you now have a mesh of these boxes, which is actually meaning there's real stability. If one box goes down, it doesn't matter. It's mirrored by the other ones, and you can be totally offline. So you actually get the stability of your own mini internet within the school. The boxes can actually all be subtly different. You know, it might be a teacher rather than a classroom that has a box. And that box becomes tailored to that teacher. And so maybe they tailor their own material, their own resources on it. These are the things where we could imagine your whole school management system could be on the boxes. This is exactly what would be conceived and the equivalent of what's happening in the farming context, where you're not differentiating between your school management system and your learning management system. They can both coexist on the box. It's not that the box is for learning and you have to have something different. You're online and you have to have something different for the school management. These two can coexist. Your internal facing, what's on the intranet, your mesh of these boxes, and what's outward looking, what somebody on the internet can see when that mesh is connected to the internet, these are all easy things to control as well with this. And so you're actually, although it's all sovereign within, you can make some things publicly available. And so people who are outside who want to see your website, that website could exist and be hosted not on a server somewhere else, but on your boxes, these servers.
So why is this a leap forward and not just a nostalgia play where you are going back to this very rudimentary homespun kind of early internet? Why is this really progress? And progress can come from backlash, recognizing that there's a lot of stuff that we're getting right now that's crap, that's not helpful, whatever. But I think that there's more here, that there's real innovation. And so could you talk through that?
Absolutely. And this would not have been possible without the, if you want, computational advances, the memory advances, and so on, which mean that you can now get these extremely powerful mini servers. Raspberry Pi servers with a terabyte hard drive, really cost effective, a few $100s. This is the technology advances which mean that this is now feasible again. We went through a period where all you had was the machines that different people had connected to the internet. And yes, the resources were limited, but by having them all hooked together, that made enough. And then we got to the stage where, well, it was much more efficient to centralize. And now we're getting to the stage where there's enough power which can be concentrated in these small things that you can decentralize again. And so it is really the fact that, and I think the big thing is, let me see if I can just get to this. It's the fact that you can do so much with a small device, with a small server. You're not limited. You can put a small language model on that server, which can run your own internal chatbots and so on, which are tailored in powerful ways. That work is going to improve over the next few years. But it is this fact that there is a genuine alternative now because the computational power is so high, you can do a lot with a little.
It's so interesting. This theme that keeps emerging for us is you referenced that Sam Altman quote a while ago in one of our previous episodes where he says, you could do more with less, but why would you want to? We just want to keep going bigger. But actually, what I hear thematically across, and I think what we're seeing is actually there's so much you can do now with so much less in a way where tech has actually, tech has built these systems, big tech has built these systems and built innovation that actually is now in many ways stuff that the rest of us can use to kind of reclaim some agency. Even when you're talking about the boxes, what I'm hearing in a lot of this is, regulation like GDPR is solving data privacy issues on the logic that other people are holding all of your data. There are all these issues with data control, data privacy, whatever. And now you can get to the place, well, all of your student data could just be on that box. You're holding all of this stuff very locally, and then it just becomes a non-issue.
No, you've nailed it. This is the thing. Imagine a school which has a box in it for every teacher or whatever it is. Then your whole setup could be your student data exists on all of those boxes encrypted in certain ways, and it never leaves that mesh, and it's totally backed up. They're backing each other up. If one box goes down, another box can restore it. You have all the stability you need from the cloud infrastructure embedded in local infrastructure. It's incredible, and it's achievable. What's really incredible about this, and it is not there yet.
Yes, this is not ready to deploy at scale.
My mind was blown by recognizing that this is doable now with the right work, whereas I thought this was a pipe dream down the line for us to work, to dream towards. But what he's shown is that these things can happen now. We just need to put the work in.
Can I ask a few questions? Are there issues in this? So when you're talking about, okay, you've got your student data on your box and you need to back it up somewhere else. What do those issues of data privacy look like? Are these encryption problems? Is there like really hard new software that would need to be developed to prevent hacking or whatever the issues are that we see in the current internet and system?
The brilliant answer to that is both yes and no. The simple answer is no, these tools already exist, but these tools are getting hacked, and actually using these open source tools, there is a continual battle between actually the security of those tools and the ability to crack that security. And so there's an ongoing need for maintenance development of the tools. But the powerful point is that that doesn't need to affect the user of them. This is something which developers can be looking at and then sending out as patches to the boxes as those get done. So yes, there's going to be a need for continual upgrading of the security of these boxes. If these boxes start holding really important data, the beauty of starting with farm data as he's done is actually GDPR on your crops and your livestock is less important.
And so what I hear in this is you still need, not to bring this back to just the cold, hard realities of money, but this is in some sense still something that requires upkeep. The idea that this is just free and you get your box and it runs. There's definitely an element of people are doing work who are outside of a community, some global community of experts. And what does it look like to build that system? And I don't know that you know the answer, but I think it is like, how do you get people to value that, but not feel like they are, oh, this is just another subscription product. I'm locked into something. Obviously, you can build it on more ethical businesses or assumptions about how much money something needs to make. Is it sustainable? Is it making returns for shareholders? Whatever that spectrum of ways that you might conceive of something. But how does that play out?
Of course, the simple answer to that question, which is the only honest answer I can give, is I don't know. But that's what's so exciting. I have lots of ideas about it, but we don't know how this would play out. And nobody does. What I do know is that what this is giving is the potential for different models. These sort of ideas put right, there could be, and the focus on, it's not just the focus on open source, it is the elements of this tech assessment of the open source where these choices. I love the fact that all the software comes with what he calls cards, but I call metadata. You actually know what you're getting. He likens this to a library, and I like that. This is about curation. So what people are working on is now in the library, and people are discussing it, and you can do it, but in a way which is bounded. The whole point of what he's doing is that there is a natural reason to bound this. The farm hack box is really for farms, for farmer cooperatives, for farm-related organizations. And it is the set of technologies which are open and aligned according to his criteria, which such organizations would value and use, but it's bounded to them. Now, if we had a similar school box, which I'm talking to him about, and I was really pleased with his reaction because he was already thinking along those lines. If we had a similar school box, it would be the same. It's bounded by specific use cases. And as other use cases emerge, you bound it by those use cases. Now, the things which he is really interested in thinking about, and I'm really interested in thinking about, and hopefully we'll collaborate on it. Well, once you have that bound, and once you have something, how is it governed? Who makes decisions? How are those decisions? How is it accredited? How is it adapted? Adapting is easy because anyone can adapt it, but how do those adaptations feed their way back into things which go out to others? Oh, these are hard questions. He doesn't have the answers either, which is great because nobody has these answers.
We talk about this all the time. These aren't technology problems. They are social problems. They are organization problems. They are how humans cooperate and collaborate to create value. All the hard stuff. Well, it's all hard stuff.
It's not. That's what's so beautiful. The technology piece is the
easier piece. Well, it's more rational, I suppose, or easier to sort of model in some way.
Look, let me just dig into that a little bit, because what do we mean by it's the easy piece? Well, you just need a few technologists to be working on it well, and those problems are solved. Whereas the hard bits of the community pieces, the human pieces, everybody has to work on those. And we have to figure those out, and different people will do them in different ways. Whereas just a few people working on the technology stuff can solve all the problems. And that's why it's all upside down in the world at the moment.
Yeah, and I think we focus a lot, or almost, I mean, entirely on impact, but I think what you can see in this is that it gives space for something really competitive that's an alternative to rise as, a viable way forward, where right now the tyranny of a certain model of just the things that are pushed on us and the assumptions about how technology should work, this is really creating space for this can look quite different. This is how it can work. This is how it adds value. We have a say over what this looks like. And yeah, I think it's all of the conversations right now about kind of like the dead internet and AI slop and all these things that are just kind of taking over our online spaces. This presents the idea that you could really have a robust alternative that's not just idealistic and kind of a sidebar.
And this is not running away from the latest technologies. On the contrary, this is embracing. Would not have been possible without AI. This will not really develop into what it needs to be without AI. But let's be clear, this is not the AI big tech is selling you. This is AI which fits on a box. Oh, it's so exciting!
I think that's a good place to end. It is really interesting.
It is.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.